Good morning. You're listening to Inquisition Update. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Tom Fress, and I'll be your host this morning. We're reading the book Codeword Barbelon, Antichrist is a Woman, Alive and Well Again by P.D. Stewart. We're going to begin reading the next chapter of this book, chapter 49. You'll find it on page 329 if you're following along. But first, for continuity purposes, I'll read the very last paragraph where we ended yesterday. What then is the purpose of this bloody sacrament of the Romish Mass? It has one purpose and one purpose only, to keep man from God, by detaining him with the priests, which detention, says Dr. Cumming, is the grand effort of all false religions. We were speaking yesterday about this blasphemous falsehood called transubstantiation. This idea that the priest who elevates the host, the round piece of bread of the Roman Catholic Church, and utters the cryptic hocus pocus, the Latin phrase hoc est corpus meum, at which time Jesus comes off of his throne and bodily indwells or transforms or transubstantiates the bread elevated by the priest into his literal blood, body, soul, and divinity to be sacrificed again on the Roman Catholic altar. It is the mark of Antichrist, and it should deceive no one who has a working knowledge of the Scriptures. One of the marks of Antichrist, one of the many marks that distinguish the Roman Catholic Church as that great apostasy, that counterfeit Christianity that has deceived the whole world. Chapter 49, again, is entitled Signs, Lying Wonders, and Soul-Destroying Delusions. Begins with a passage from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3, 9, and 10. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, that is, the coming of Antichrist, shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, whose coming is after the working of Satan, not Christ, after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Unquote. In other words, what is going to mark this working of Satan is counterfeit signs, miracles, lying wonders, apparitions, transubstantiations, hocus pocus. It defines the Roman Catholic Church. The author begins the chapter by saying, as Jesus Christ launched his church with many miracles throughout the towns and villages of Galilee and Judea, so too Antichrist in like manner would certify her mission by signs and wonders. To counter or refute the proofs of Scripture and history against her claims to Christianity, the Church of Rome seeks to rely on signs and wonders as evidence of her divine origin. As Jesus Christ launched his church with many miracles throughout the towns and villages of Galilee and Judea, so too Antichrist in like manner would certify her mission by signs and wonders. To counter or refute the proofs of Scripture and history against her claims to Christianity, the Church of Rome seeks to rely on signs and wonders as evidence of her divine origin and destiny. Signs and miracles, she says, is proof that God is in her midst and that his favor and blessing is upon her, manifest for all to see. And this is the boast of the Roman Catholic Church, that all these mystical signs and wonders that are manifest in the Roman Catholic Church are the sign that God has ascribed his name to the church, that he dwells in that church, and that he is the origin of all these signs and miracles. These are the lying signs and wonders prophesied in the Scriptures. These are counterfeit. It is the boast of every Roman Catholic that the bleeding heart statues, those statues who bleed, who cry tears of blood, and the stigmatists and the apparitions of Mary and all of these pretended miracles of the Roman Catholic Church are signs of God's manifestation. They're not. They're signs of Satan's manifestation. And we're going to substantiate that completely in this chapter. The author continues, he says, today in Roman Catholic churches and in Catholic areas of the world, there is a resurgence of signs and wonders. Statues are weeping blood and oil, even tears. The Eucharistic host is turned to flesh, oozing blood. Catholic stigmatists, those who spontaneously produced the wounds of Jesus, nail prints in their hands and their feet, and holes in their sides, and streams of blood coming from their brows as though they had worn the crown of thorns. These Catholic stigmatists are not uncommon in the Catholic Church. Marian apparitions are ever frequent, and the dead quote-unquote virgin has even appeared on the window of a building in Florida, holding the baby Jesus in her arms. On pages 13 and 14 of his aforementioned book, The Roman Catholic Hierarchy by Thomas E. Watson, reveals, quote, in the Church of Araceli is the famous Bambino, the miracle-working image of the infant Christ. This is entirely covered with beautiful gems and is taken to the deathbed of the sick. Says the guidebook, if the Bambino changes color, the sick person will recover. The Church of Quo Vadis on the Appian Way boasts the naked footprint of Peter in solid marble. In Rome, lots of footprints and headprints seem to exist in solid stone, and no one seems at all under any necessity to explain how soft, yielding flesh could leave marks 4 or 5 inches deep in hard stone. Yet in the Mamertine prison, the dungeon in which, we agree, Paul was most probably incarcerated, they have managed to include Peter in the scene as well. Now, I'll just stop with the quote to tell you, we've determined that Peter never set foot in Rome. It is absolutely necessary for Rome to substantiate that Peter established the Christian church in Rome, because the papacy claims to be Peter's successor. All right? So here we have Rome contriving this idea, or substantiating the lie, that Peter was the founder of the Roman Catholic Church by these things. It says the apostle is said to have reclined against the rock wall of the prison and left his headprint for all posterity to see. Okay, that proves that the Roman Catholic Church was started by Peter, right? Peter left his headprint in stone. I mean, it's absurd. But Catholics all over the world believe this. The quote continues, the church has covered the 4-inch deep headprint with a metal grill to protect it. Why would they go to such length? Because that's their proof that Peter was their first pope. Now, the story also has it that on one occasion, both Paul and Peter were chained to one pillar in the prison, and about that time they accomplished the conversion of 2 jailers. Not being in a position to baptize them by immersion and longing for some water, a miracle occurred. Excuse me. A miracle occurred, and where the apostles' feet rested, a spring of water gushed forth. However, this spring in the Mamertine happens to be mentioned by Roman historians 300 years before this supposed miracle took place. And this also, since there was no water in which to baptize by immersion, this spring of water that came up under Peter's feet is also justification for sprinkling as a legitimate form of baptism, when the biblical baptism was immersion. So here we see Roman Catholic doctrine developing with all these lies and lying wonders purported to have occurred in Rome. The quote continues, "A church that houses the very cradle in which Jesus was rocked as a babe must surely be a good story. Must surely have a good story regarding its origin. The Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, to quote the official narrative, quote, was built in 352 by divine inspiration by Pope Liberius, who one August night, had an apparition of the Madonna, who ordered him to build a church where he would have found fresh fallen snow." Yes, it's going to snow in August in Rome. It says, "On the following morning, the spot where the church now stands was found covered by a miraculous fall of snow, on which Pope Liberius traced the new church, while a patrician, John, who had the same apparition of the Virgin, supplied funds for its erection." I have to ask, if Mary wanted a church there, why didn't she just build it herself? Okay, all power and signs and lying wonders, and it deceives the whole world. The world is looking for a sign, a miracle, to confirm their faiths. And when they go to the Roman Catholic Church, that's what they get. Because Rome is the magician. It can conjure up just about any demon. Now, the church also boasts the body of Matthew. Yes, that's right. Matthew is still in the Catholic Church, amazingly. Matthew never set foot in Rome either. And a number of other quote-unquote saints, as well as the miraculous image of the Madonna. Painted by Luke, they say. Yes, Luke was an idolater and painted an image of Mary to be worshipped by Christian posterity. How absurd. And it says it is carried in procession by Pope Gregory the Great to stay the plague of 590 A.D. At various times, this image is said to weep tears. Santa Maria Maggiore is one of the 5 basilicas in Rome, and the only basilica in the world enjoying the privilege of possessing 2 papal altars. Boy, double your pleasure, double your fun. Make 2 papal altars, all chiseled out of stone with tools forbidden by God, and you've got a Christian church, believe it or not. Now, in a more recent Catholic book entitled The Thunder of Justice by Ted and Maureen Flynn, with a foreword by Jesuit Professor Malachi Martin, there are exhibits of numerous photographs of signs and wonders that the authors say prove that the Roman Catholic faith is God's true church. On page 259, the book says the following about the Catholic mystic and stigmatist Therese Newman. Yes, a stigmatist. She can just spontaneously produce wounds in her hands and her feet and her brow, as though she were the one crucified. Therese Newman, who lived from 1898 to 1962, mystic and stigmatist of Germany. She did not eat, drink, sleep, or have bodily functions for 40 years. That means she never went to the bathroom. It says a well-documented fact, they say, she lives solely on the Eucharist, unquote. That's all she ate, the Jesus cookie. And she lived on it for 40 years. and never went to the bathroom. All power and signs and lying wonders. And on page 160, the authors write that Mary said, quote, "Through the kiss I have bestowed on these objects, my son will perform miracles, wonders. The fulfillment of this promise has been realized by conversions and cures," unquote. And on page 14 and 15 we read, quote, "These widespread reports of appearances of Mary, accompanied by many well-documented and scientifically inexplicable phenomena, which are also signs, the multiplication of reports of Marian apparitions in our day, and the signs and wonders being experienced by millions of ordinary Catholic people, are indications of very great hope," unquote. What is that hope? They're still hoping. And rightly they should hope that Jesus is the producer of these powerful signs and lying wonders. So apparently Mary is redoubling efforts to make herself visible to mankind, and it is through her power that we are seeing these signs and wonders. But are all or any of these signs and wonders from God? Perhaps we have a partial answer from the book What I Saw in Rome, where in chapter 4, John F. Coulthart writes of his visit to that great city, quote, "Of course, weeping statues are not uncommon, and I was amazed as I saw the crowds in Turin round a glass case containing a Madonna that was said to weep. All were praying, and some were deeply touched. It reminded me of Rome's famous chalice that was said to fill with blood of Christ at certain times each year, and images of Jesus on the cross that were supposed to gush forth blood. The latter were very popular until last century, when a workman repairing one of the churches discovered the image connected by pipes to a spot where a rooster was slain, or on special days a goat, and its blood forced through these small tubes," unquote. All power and signs and lying wonders. How correct was St. Paul when he warned that there would come false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. For Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if Satan's ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness. We're speaking directly about the Roman Catholic priesthood. This is from 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 13 and 15. And in Revelation chapter 16, verse 13 through 14, we're told that at the end of time there would be, quote, "unclean spirits like frogs, the spirits of devils working miracles," unquote. These prophecies all apply to the spiritual manifestations we see in this mystery Roman Catholic Church. Perhaps the reader thinks I'm joking. No, reader, the hour in which we live is too solemn to be spent in jokes. A few paragraphs above, we read the Roman Catholic Church claiming the widespread reports of signs and wonders are indications and marks of her true divine favor, they say. Now compare those words with the expression of St. Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3, 9, and 10, concerning the deceptions that would be manifested with the coming of Antichrist. Quote, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day," that is the setting up of Antichrist, "shall not come, except there come a falling away, an apostasy first, and that man of sin be revealed, Then shall that wicked be revealed, whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. The apostle was speaking of that which would soon succeed him, the Roman Catholic Church. Now, what a description, says the author. We are told that the coming or the manifestation of Antichrist would be with signs and lying wonders and all kinds of deceptive unrighteousness. How uncanny that the evidences the Roman Catholic Church has chosen to use to prove her divine favor, these signs and lying wonders, are the very phenomena that St. Paul said would be one of the hallmarks of Antichrist, whose coming he said would be with all power and signs and lying wonders. The Bible certainly has a knack for choosing the exact prophetic words to finger the Romish Antichrist, signs and lying wonders. Let the reader ponder that this is the divine testimony regarding Antichrist. Are these not remarkable coincidences? Does not the likeness fit? But the same passage of Scripture says that these lying wonders will be with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 10. Here's what Protestant historian and writer Dr. James A. Wiley said of the latter expression. Quote, "Let us mark the phrase. It is a very remarkable one. It is used in no other place. It is employed to describe no other system. It describes the great apostasy, and it alone. It is not simply deceivableness, nor is it simply unrighteousness. It is the deceivableness of unrighteousness. Nay, it is all deceivableness of unrighteousness." Wiley adds concerning the phrase signs and lying wonders, quote, "But let us mark how different it is with the other class of miracles, and how lacking they are in that indubitable evidence that attested the mission of the Son of God. There's not one of them that could maintain its claim as a verifiable fact before a tribunal of unbiased and enlightened judges. Some of these miracles were evidently cheats on those in whose presence they were wrought. But let us mark how different it is with the other class of miracles, and how lacking they are in that indubitable evidence that attested the mission of the Son of God. There is not one of them that could maintain its claim as a verifiable fact before a tribunal of unbiased and enlightened judges. Some of these miracles were evidently cheats on those in whose presence they were wrought. Of late, many startling discoveries have been made of the machinery by which these miracles, these so-called miracles, were done. Many of these wonders were not published to the world till some hundreds of years after they were said to have been wrought. Their workers would seem to have been unambitious of living fame, seeing that they hid their light under a bushel. And some of these miracles are so childish that it is an insult to our understanding to ask us to believe that God ever interposed his power to work such deeds. Prophecy gave them the right name before they were done. They are lying wonders." Unquote. Now, James A. Wiley gives his final thoughts on the matter of Catholic miracles and the whole ritualistic catastrophe. Quote, "The spiritual performances of the Church of Rome are emphatically lying wonders. Baptismal regeneration is a lying wonder. Sacramental grace is a lying wonder. Priestly power is a lying wonder. The absolution of the confessional is a lying wonder. Transubstantiation is the biggest wonder and the greatest lie of all. and extreme unction, that when the priest gives the last rites for the remission of sins at death, is a last and fatal lie, unquote. Wiley concludes, quote, there is no reality behind any of these, and they are the more to be deplored that they have immediate reference to the eternal world, and that millions have taken their departure fully confiding in these lies for salvation, unquote. What more can we say about all these astounding discoveries but cry out in the words of the Catholic prayer, Kyrie Eleison, Lord, have mercy on their souls. O Lord, save your people among them. Indeed, who can blame Richard Littledale when he said, quote, the Pope is a murderer of souls. He destroys and flays the flock of Christ. He is more cruel than Judas, more unjust than Pilate. All the 10 Commandments he has changed into this one, money, money, unquote. As I said in Book 1, says the author, the Pope and his legion of priests merely don the livery of Christ to serve the devil. I must therefore, and shortly will, lift the veil and show to you the cloven hoof of popery, the manifest externalization of Antichrist, and its deep-laid schemes. If you think my words too harsh, then perhaps you prefer Martin Luther's assessment of popery, which is not a little amusing. Quote, the Pope was born of the devil and is full of devils, lies, blasphemy, and idolatry. He is the husband of Antichrist, the robber of churches, the violator of virgins, the chief of pimps, and the governor of Sodom. The governor of Sodom. How appropriate in the midst of the global pedophile priest pandemic in the world. And Luther was once a Roman Catholic priest, one who God called by his divine providence to preach the truth among Roman Catholics. And Martin Luther, like P.D. Stewart, did not mince his words. He spoke in terms that even a moron could understand. Why is the world deceived? Why are those still holding to the faith of Roman Catholicism who hear the truth in P.D. Stewart's book? Come out of her, my people, that you partake not of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Not one of the iniquities of the Roman Catholic Church has been forgotten by God. And there are plagues that will descend upon that church, and those who remain in it come out before it's too late. The author says, again we say, O Lord, save your people from these pagan priests who say, quote, in obedience to the words of the priest, hoc est corpus meum, God himself descends on the altar, that he comes whenever they call him, and as often as they call him, and places him in their hands, even though they should be his enemies. And after having come, he remains entirely at their disposal. They move him as they please from one place to another. They may, if they wish, shut him up in the tabernacle, expose him on the altar, or carry him outside the church. They may, if they choose, eat his flesh and give him for the food of others. Oh, how great is the power of the priest. Unquote. Save your people from the priests who, speaking lies and hypocrisy and having their conscience seared with a hot iron, say to the people, quote, the priesthood is an astounding miracle, great, immense. The power of the Roman Catholic priest is the power of the divine person. Thus the priest may be called the creator of the creator, unquote. These are the blasphemous words by one of the great doctors of the Roman Catholic Church, a demon from hell, Liguri. And from the priests who say further that, quote, the priesthood is the most sublime of all created dignities, an infinite dignity, an astounding miracle, great, immense, and infinite, exalted above all celestial heights, unquote. More blasphemy from this great doctor of the Roman Catholic Church, Liguri. Hear now, O ye priests, take heed, O ye popes, ye scribes and Pharisees, ye brood of Satan. Jesus said, needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man, that priest by whom these offenses come. It would be better that you were never born, and that a millstone were hung around your neck, and that you were cast into the depths of the sea. You have abused the little ones in your charge, sodomized and soiled their persons and their tender consciences with your deeds and your words. And not content with defiling the little lambs, you have defiled their mothers and their sisters too, and led astray their fathers. For your sorceries, your lies, are all these people deceived? By your sorceries are all these people deceived? No, that's not enough. 4 more woes unto you. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. You neither go in yourselves, neither suffer you them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, you Roman Catholic priests, you hypocrites, for you compass sea and land to make one convert to your cult. And when he is made 2-fold more the child of hell than yourselves. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, you Roman Catholic priests, you blind guides. You strain out a gnat, but you swallow a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but you are full of dead men's bones, and so are your cathedrals and your altars. Contaminated, you are all unclean. Within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. You serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? You outwardly appear righteous to men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. With embellishment. That comes from Matthew chapter 23, verse 13, 15, 24, 27, 28, and 33. Woe unto you, hypocrites! And who could Matthew have been speaking but the Roman Catholic priests of our day? The modern day archetypes of the Jewish prototypes to which Matthew was speaking. These words were written for our understanding, that we would recognize the priests of Rome as the modern day likeness of those that Jesus despised, that Matthew despised, that all the godly men of that day despised. Counterfeits who shut up the kingdom of heaven and preach doctrines of demons. It's the Roman Catholic Church. And now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. If you will not hear it, if you will not lay it to heart, saith the Lord of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you. It is an old axiom that the priest's lips should keep knowledge, for he is the messenger of the Lord's host. But ye are departed out of the way. Ye have caused many to stumble. You have corrupted the covenant of Levi. Malachi chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. Therefore, I have no pleasure in you, saith the Lord of hosts. Neither will I accept an offering, your masses and your sacraments at your hand. Malachi chapter 1, verse 10. O ye priests, which walketh in the way that is not good, after your own thoughts, that sacrificeth in gardens, in your groves and your grottos, and burneth incense upon your altars made of hand-hewn brick, that worship among the graves, your dead bones and relics. You offer to me the broth of abominable things. In your vessels, your jewel-encrusted chalices and monstrances, which say, stand by yourself, come not near me, for I am holier than thou. Your sacraments are a stink in my nostrils, like the smoke of a fire that burneth all day, saith the Lord of hosts. Isaiah chapter 65, verse 2 through 5. Therefore will I number you to the sword, and ye shall all bow down to the slaughterer. Because when I spake, you did not hear, but did evil before mine eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not. God add his richness and blessing and understanding to the reading of his own precious word that unmistakably describes these priests of Rome. Do you know something? This book ought to be read verbatim in an open session of the Supreme Court of the United States. That's what I think of this book. What courage! A courage that it could only come from the glorious God of heaven to write a book like this and sell it on the open market. God protect P.D. Stewart from the onslaught of persecution that he will surely suffer for telling the truth in an age of liars, hypocrites. Chapter 50 is entitled Antichrist, a Persecuting Power. Begins with a quote from the book of Daniel, the great prophet of God, Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, who foretold this Antichrist church. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And he shall think to change times and laws, God's times and God's laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of time. And who was he speaking of? Here's a quote from a Roman Catholic periodical named The Western Watchman. This was issued November 21st, 1912. Quote, we have never written a line in extenuation or palliation of the Inquisition. We never thought it needed a defense. Unquote. There's the persecutor of the saints. The one who thinks it does the work of God by persecuting God's faithful through the Holy Roman Inquisition. The Roman Catholic Church has spilled more innocent blood than any other institution on the planet in the history of the world. But we're all taught to fear Islam. How convenient. Here's an artist's rendition of a faithful believer in Christ being burned alive at the stake. The author says, another characteristic of this mystery system of Antichrist, said Bishop Newton, is that she would not only be infamous for her idolatry, but also equally detestable for her cruelty. So much so that John the Revelator, on seeing this barbarous whore in vision, said emphatically that he wondered with great wonder. Quote, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Revelation chapter 17, verse 6. How many of God's people have perished at her hand? And look what the ecumenical movement has brought to this country. Look what the ecumenical movement has brought to this country. Those who call themselves Christians today want peace and unity with this blood-soaked church. The author continues, he says, likewise, the Old Testament prophecy of Daniel tells us that Antichrist, I'm sorry I'm overcome this morning. Likewise, the Old Testament prophecy of Daniel tells us that Antichrist, through her male figurehead, would dominate the conscience and persecute the people of God. Quote, he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Daniel 7:25. And who could this apply to more than the papacy and the Roman Catholic Church? And in the very last book of Scripture, John the Revelator writes, quote, and the dragon, Satan, persecuted the woman, the church, the true church of Jesus Christ, which brought forth the man-child, Christ himself. And to the woman, the pure church, were given 2 wings that she might fly into the wilderness, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. In other words, the 1,260 literal years as we've seen in history and as explained so voluminously in these series of books by P.D. Stewart. Revelation chapter 13, verse 17 adds, quote, and it was given unto him, the Antichrist, to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him. Listen, power was given him, the Antichrist, the Pope of Rome, over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Revelation 13:7. That, my friends, is a global government of the Pope. That is the New World Order. Though it is not called the New World Order in God's holy book, certainly God has described it. The power was given him over all, not part, but all, kindreds and tongues and nations. There is a man on this earth that rules every kindred, every tongue, and every nation on the planet. And it can be none other than the Pope of Rome. There's no other candidate. Said H. Grattan Guinness, remarking on these prophecies concerning this persecuting power, a terrible enemy to God and to his church was to arise, and strange as it might seem, in the church itself, and yet it was to have its seat in Rome, unquote. How prove we this to be so? Who is not aware of the Roman Catholic Church's record in history, written in the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus? Has not the Roman Catholic Church persecuted Christians? She admits to this herself. Quote, the Church has persecuted. Only a tire in the Church history will deny that, unquote. Again, she admits, quote, the Church may, by divine right, confiscate the property of heretics, imprison their persons, and condemn them to the flames, unquote. No, she does not apologize for the Inquisitions and the Crusades. She makes them her boast. She's drunk, literally drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. No other candidate, no, the Muslims don't stand a chance of fulfilling this description of Antichrist in the Bible. If you were to take a walk about Rome, you would see in many places paintings and statues depicting scenes of persecution. But in the Church of the Jesuits, you would see an even more alarming statuary showing the Church of Rome trampling underfoot and persecuting those who disagree with her, including a huge statue of Martin Luther, with the Jesuit founder Ignatius Loyola treading on Martin Luther's neck. And if you haven't seen that picture, when you realize what that statue represents, it represents the Jesuit order annihilating Protestantism. Ignatius Loyola is the icon, the founder of the Jesuit order, and Martin Luther is regarded the world over as the father of the Protestant Reformation. It's Ignatius Loyola who stands on the neck of Martin Luther. It's simply, in artistic form, showing exactly what Rome intends to do. Crush Protestantism. Crush the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. No, the Antichrist won't be a Muslim. He'll be a Roman Catholic. He is a Roman Catholic. He was a Roman Catholic, and he's been killing God's saints for at least 1,500 years. Antichrist won't come in the future. He's been wearing out the saints for nearly 2 millennia. We've been deceived even in our own churches.